Everybody, so welcome and welcome to everybody that's joined. This is the first of 6 Cognoscenti webinars that are being hosted by the NBRA with our guests tonight that is Dave Shepherd, Andy Warren and Kate Goodwin, who I'm sure many of you will know. It is a rather odd time, 7 o'clock. We discussed, whether this was a good time to do a webinar or not. Hopefully we've got you for 45 minutes. But in the round, we kind of decided that for you busy people, and I know everybody's busy at the moment, at least it gives people the opportunity to join live if they actually want to. I know it's a bit of an awkward time, but thank you for joining and let us know how this time works for you or whether we should be doing things at different times. So I'll tell everybody so excited. This session is going to be about the cost of living crisis and recession and how that's affecting our industry. My colleague Anthony said maybe it should be the cost of repairing crisis, but that's probably another show. So we have 3 of the 4 founder Cognoscenti here, all of whom you'll probably know, but they will do brief intros as they come in. Just want to remind everybody before we kick off, there is a chat function in Zoom and it is really good. As we go along, if you want to ask any questions, please do pop a question in the chat and we'll do our best to get to it. I've been assured by the Cognoscenti that anything that we miss today will get answered post-event, which is great actually, because so often that doesn't happen. So thanks guys for that assurance. Okay, so first of all though, before we start, I'll probably ask Andy Warren, if I may, who is Cognoscenti? Why was it formed and what's it all about?
Well, thank you, Chris. Evening, everybody, and thanks for making time at this unsociable hour when you've all finished your day jobs as well. So Cognoscenti, as you can see, is Dave, Kate, myself. The word Cognoscenti means, to read the concise Oxford, a group of people who have a great knowledge and understanding of a particular subject. So with a combined 100 years of industry knowledge between Dave, Kate and myself, I think we fit the bill quite well, or just old codgers if you want to call us that as well. But the 3 of us, we've known each other for well over 25 years each, never actually working in the same company. I had a brief spell with Dave at Aldertex, but as suppliers, customers and advisors to one another. So first and foremost, there's always been a great bond of immense trust and respect between us all. And our vast pool of skills have been accumulated from our roles working across the industry, touching, I suppose, all elements of the motor and repair value chain, directly for or as suppliers or advisors to repairers, insurers and work providers, vehicle manufacturers, tech businesses, car rental, etc., etc. So more often than not always, but mostly, we've always agreed that the industry worked together a whole lot better with collaboration. I think that's just kind of common sense, rather than a dominant party pressurizing a different section of the automotive family. My background being mainly as an insurer, I was probably more a factor of that than the other 2. But while we all believed in a common approach, the industry with such giant stakeholders like banks, insurers, lawyers, vehicle manufacturers, and let's not forget the government and parliament getting involved at every available opportunity, moving to a model of complete collaboration was really just too colossal a step to comprehend. So Kate, Dave and I, we'd always go back to our day jobs mindful of the knowledge that the involvement of a team with deep industry knowledge that brought all parties together was the only real way of ensuring that all stakeholders would remain profitable by being sustainable and, I guess, whilst observing any anti-competitiveness, collaborating. So welcome 2020, bring on the unprecedented impacts of Brexit, pandemic, Ukraine, and add to that further issues created by the global, economy issues and factors like massive and growing supply chain dependency on China with their very unsettled geopolitical situation and their continuing sort of zero COVID tolerance policies. And you have the perfect storm. So my weekly reads of things like trend tracker reports and State of the Nation weren't painting particularly pretty pictures for me. And then during one of our three-way lockdown COVID wine-based chats, Dave, Kate and I, or Kate especially, picked up on the fact that as an industry, we were now being forced to talk and collaborate, and parties really had no choice, all because of COVID. So for once, nobody really held the whip hand in the repair of value chain relationships. We were all facing challenges never encountered before. VMs had no cars to sell, used car prices went through the roof, rental companies had no cars to rent, repair volumes dropped off a cliff, petrol prices collapsed, policy holders were demanding refunds on unused insurance policies, repairers lost staff, getting parts became a major challenge, etc., etc. You all know the analogies. So in early 22, we all agreed it'd be a great time to leverage this sort of new age of incidental collaboration, because all sectors were seeing they were sort of metaphorically in the same boat as each other, or as I sort of describe it normally, we're all handcuffed to the same bomb. So the three of us met many times over Q3 and Q4 last year and concluded there was space to do something really, really useful and really exciting that no party had ever really achieved before. And that was to harmonise and bring together all sectors of the automotive repair for the better of the industry and ultimately for the end customer. And we've set about creating awareness of the challenges that our industry is facing now and going forward as much as we can and or predict. That while there still isn't full market collaboration, it really has improved, and Cognoscenti want to accelerate it and spearhead a concerted effort to fix issues across the sectors. And Cognoscenti believe we can create and implement vast improvement that's financial, operational and customer beneficial for all sectors by bringing awareness of wider issues and impacts laterally of decisions sort of normally made in isolation. So that in a nutshell is the sort of philosophy of Cognoscenti and why it started, Chris.
Andy, that is really, really good. I don't think you missed anything there. I picked up on the fact that the collaboration was a wine-fueled collaboration, and that what the catalyst for it. But you know, I do agree with everything you say. You know, we do need some big names and some big characters that are trusted around the industry to pull together the debate and bring as many parties as possible to collaborate, because it just hasn't really ever happened well, I don't think. So well done you guys for kicking that off. Okay, so moving into the main discussion, the recession and cost of living crisis. I suppose there's lots of discussion about whether or not we are actually in a recession. I think that's a technical term, isn't it? Does this matter for the purposes of the discussion? Probably one to ask Dave.
It's you're right with this technical recession. Yeah, we're not as a country technically in a recession, but you know, most businesses and most people, I think we all feel that we are in a recession and that we're not seeing the end of this at the moment. It feels like a recession, but the country being in the recession or the industry, again, different things. So whilst the country is not doing very well, if you look at most of the repair shops that we speak to at the moment and talking to insurance companies, there's still a lot of work around. So you look at that and perhaps feel that we're not in this recession. But you know, a recent BBC survey showed that almost 40% of people were worried about paying their bills that they'd incurred over Christmas, and some of them saying this is going to take 2 years to pay back. And I think when we're busy in the shops, sometimes we don't look beyond, you know, our four walls, if you like. So we're busy, things are going on. Are we earning the right profitability? We'll cover that a little bit later. But I think sometimes we forget what's going on outside in the wider world, and also with the families of the people that we employ. You know, and we've seen, you know, I think some, you know, to Andy's point and yours, Chris, some real collaboration around, I suppose, really insurance companies recognizing some of the pain that the industry's in. There have been some labour rate increases. You know, there's been contributions to energy. There was support for the COVID, I suppose, really the cleaning, all of the extras that went on. And we've seen some of those being now built up into, you know, in the outer text world in zone 99. But, you know, I think the question is, you know, and perhaps Kate, you'd like to jump in here, but what has it meant for you as a business in terms of your profitability? You know, are you seeing more profitability? And Kate, you know, working closely with the networks, you know, perhaps you'd like to have you've got a view on that, Kate?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Oh, is that me? Feedback. I think it's we have seen various insurers, accident managers making changes. Some to the labour rates, some with the fees, so the COVID clean charge, the energy charges, etc., etc. A lot of that sort of coming through as zone 99 if we're talking out of text terms. And there's a couple of things with that. Is one, thank you very much to everybody that's done that, and you know, every insurer, every work provider that's stepped forward and has taken those steps, because whether we like it or not, they are brave steps. We all consume insurance, and you know, ultimately us as a consumer of insurance will be paying in some way for that. I think there was something in the ABP this week about the percentage that insurance premiums have gone up, which is unprecedented, blah blah blah. But I think the questions that really the repairers should be asking themselves in terms of, you know, those changes that you've seen in your terms, if we call it that, are they trickling down to your bottom line? What difference is that making to you as a business? And how are you reacting to that? There's some other questions as well that if we had longer than we've got, I'd really like to talk about in terms of the consistent application of those charges. You know, what checks have you got, checks and balances have you got internally to make sure that actually your estimators are remembering the energy fee, etc., etc. All of those things, which, you know, should be standard practice, but they're easy things to miss. And I think it's really a time. I mean, one phrase that we've started talking about when we've been doing sort of, you know, prep for this is this kind of volume versus value analogy that I think really repairers could start to really consider more of. So everybody is busy, lead times are, well, you know, through the roof. I don't know a repairer right now that's struggling for work anywhere. Trying to manage their lead times is really, really difficult when you look at the shortage of mobility, parts, people, all of those things. So, you know, that consideration of volume versus value. And I think it was Tesco recently, and they published their results. Well, their revenue is up, their sales are not. And I think there's lots of things that we should be looking at as an industry to kind of sense check where we're headed in a profitability terms, rather than, to quote Dave earlier, just kind of looking in the four walls and going, oh, we're busy, so therefore everything must be okay, because it might not be the case.
Just to sort of butt in there, Kate, I mean, you know, you're right, we have seen movements with insurers, and let's be clear, you know, this session absolutely isn't about us and them. It's not about knocking insurers, it's all about collaboration. No. You know, we have seen some decent rate improvements. And we have seen some things like energy subsidies and stuff like that. You know, to be fair, repairers have seen a lot of inbound inflationary costs themselves. You know, if things hadn't moved, the pressure would be increasingly on in repairers, and their bottom line would be continuously eroded. But I think there's another part to the story. You know, I think the underwriting or the insurance industry was seeing there was a real fear of capacity, you know, leading into sort of Q4 and looking into this year with lead times sort of stretching out as they were. And I think a lot of the movements are less of a sort of you know, helping the supply chain, and more of a how can we buy a bit of capacity. We even saw some preemptive strikes by one very large insurer, didn't we, who, you know, reorganize their network in order to make sure they have plenty of capacity. So it does make you wonder, you know, how much of it is, you know, how much of it is reactive and how much of it is proactive, I suppose. I don't know if anyone's got any sort of insight.
No, I'll pick up on that, Chris. And Wayne had asked the question as well, what we could probably answer here. I think, listen, whenever, you know, we're riding in on white chargers here. You know, I mean, the problems that have been around for years remain. It's just there are a load more of sort of unprecedented ones. I don't think, I mean, there's no point in mentioning names because you'll know immediately who I refer to, but some insurers just won't change their stance. Insurers now have got, we all work to, you know, core operating ratios, which are, you know, well-planned spreadsheets normally put together in ivory towers in Fenchurch Street a year or two before. And people are trying to, like in any organisation where you're selling a product or a commodity or a service, you're trying to bend your business and invest money and, you know, cut your overheads to make that operating ratio. So when you get dumped with a load of, you know, you can't call Brexit unprecedented because it's been sitting around for 5 years, but, you know, particularly COVID, and then even more particularly the kind of Ukraine and probably the same with the increasing supply chain issues in China, you just can't plan for that. So I think for once the insurers are not, you know, entirely sort of guilty of just being big bully boys and pushing too hard. I think it's just, you know, as I said, we're in the same boat and handcuffed to the same bomb. I think moreover though, Chris, and I saw this at I Love Claims the other day, there seems to be far more insurers of the sort of, a few of the larger ones, but the middle tier and the big sort of super MJs and brokers that, you know, are cognizant of the fact that they have insurance contracts, which is basically just a piece of paper to say, if you have a commodity and you damage it, we'll put you back to a position that you were beforehand. And they need to guarantee that downstream value. Now, I think the world has made, you know, excuses and accepting COVID for the last, you know, 2 and a bit years, Chris. But going forward, if policyholders can't get their cars repaired or they get a suboptimal experience because insurers only want to pay £25 or £30 or whatever it is, and don't do something around the, you know, the running saw of courtesy cars, they're not going to be insurers, or they're just going to be dreadful insurers. So they'll have to react, and it'll be too late because capacity will be secured. So I think, you know, a long answer to a short question, but I really do see some kind of action, and with the intermediaries as well, with the accident management companies as well. There's rate discussion going on all over the place, but it's just not rate. You know, it's all the other kind of moving parts as well. So, you know, it's to say, it's a big piece. It just needs a bit more of a, I think, a step change, and it needs to be accelerated.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting what you're saying, because, you know, I talk to repairers all day, and they're seeing it now, and there's no sort of, you know, ill feeling or anything like that. But, you know, there are some underwriters that just haven't moved their terms at all, be it in terms of rate, in terms of, you know, the way their engineering approaches and everything else. And because of the way the supply and demand is at the moment, there are, you know, insurers that are dropping out the bottom. Basically, they are the ones that the repairers are saying, look, nothing personal, I just can't afford to do your work anymore. And they're getting the same answer from lots and lots of different repairers. How difficult is it for them to move with the times? Have they written themselves into a corner by underpricing their premiums or something, you know, or do you think they have got room to maneuver and sort of move back into the pack? I mean, I'd just be interested, because, you know, running an insurer now, you'll probably understand it a lot better than me and many of the other repairers that are on the call.
Yeah, I think, Chris, it's there's the sort of the haves and the not haves. You know, a lot of people kind of realise it a little bit quicker. I think organisations or insurers who go through accident management businesses to place all their work or their non-fault work are realising a lot more quickly than the ones that have just got, you know, contracts. I've not really seen any contracts waved in people's face to say, oh no, you know, parts are at 0% discount and labour rate is that during COVID. I think everybody has kind of stepped up to the plate to a degree. But one thing I'm seeing more than anything now is that, you know, I don't mean that, you know, the large groups or even the 4 and 5 shop sites. I mean independent repairers with just one voice in a postcode area and saying to insurers, I can't take your work now because there's better work out there, or actually I'm better off not doing the work at all because it's costing me money. I think it'd be wrong to say that repairers have grown a pair, because repairers, as far as I'm concerned, have always had a big pair, but they're not. They weren't afraid to say anything. But you need to guarantee your business, and when 90-something% of work comes through insurance direction or insurance sort of led direction, or accident management, or through other models, it's tough to kind of push back. And listen, if there was 60% between the best payer and the worst payer, there would be no worst payers. It's how you flex that model, the relationship you've got, and the longevity. And I cast my mind back to sort of 15 years of placing 400,000-500,000 repairs a year, and it was, everybody was happy to do the work, providing there was a straight line through the business. They weren't so worried about the fact that you were 50p an hour less, but they didn't need salesmen to go out there because they knew I was going to deliver them 50 cars a week. So, and I don't think that's changed particularly for repairers. They still want the same thing. They just want it at better terms, better deals. Well, I think they, we can always focus on labour rate and talk about it for hours, but I think it's the whole terms of the deal, Chris. That I'm really focusing on on, say, removing courtesy car, but looking at that differently. As you move to electric and more provision, I want my repairers to have vans. I want them to have electric cars. I want them to have everything. So let's look at it sort of differently. But again, take that paradigm shift and be an insurer for 30 seconds. I'm not asking anyone to feel sorry for us, but the net impact is, we have a core operating ratio. What's going to happen? We're just going to put prices up. So, everybody on this screen is going to see a 20% hike in insurance costs. Finance costs are going up,
as well. One of the things that doesn't really get talked about, and I mean, I totally get this is an NBRA webinar, and we're talking here primarily to repairers, but when you look at the cost of people, so whatever that inflationary cost has been, so if it's 20% inflationary cost in terms of salaries within a repairer, the insurers have not been immune to that. And so to Andy's point, it's not as if the impact of all these terrible things that have kind of our worlds collide situation have impacted only one sector of the industry. They have impacted the entire value chain. And then so when you are talking to an insurer, their staffing costs have gone up, their electricity costs have gone up, their churn has gone up. People don't want to work in call centres anymore. So all of those things are impacting, and it's not been an easy ride on that side as well. But it does need acknowledging, and I think I think some of the insurers have done great stuff in terms of stepping forward, and for me it isn't just about the labour rate. There's lots and lots of things that you could and should be doing, and there's actually lots and lots of things that we could and should be doing, irrespective of the fact that we've got a bit of chaos going on, and so, but it isn't always as easy as somebody just flicking a switch on a contractual term.
Totally get that.
Unfortunately.
Totally get that. I mean, it's a fair point, and thanks for making that, Kate. And we should thank those that do move, regardless. And I take Andy's point around the sort of difficulties out there. I just want to mention something that Wayne put on there. That however it's a shame that repairers have to have those conversations, and it isn't done in a more structured way. Change only seems to happen when the industry is in a corner and it can't do anything else but change or die. And and it's a shame that we have to sort of operate in that manner, but there it goes. But moving on a little bit, I suppose we're talking about recession. Insurance isn't a luxury purchase, is it? It's kind of like a compulsory purchase. So to that degree, for repairs, it's a little bit recession proof, I suppose. But consumers obviously are facing a really tough time at the moment. Everybody's feeling the pinch. Energy prices going up, food prices going up, and everything like that. That is going to flow through into the insurance industry somehow. It's going to hit repairers somehow. What should we be doing? How could we protect ourselves in 2023 against the worst effects of consumer hardship, I suppose?
It's a big one, Chris, but just to go back a little bit, you know, part of what you were saying around, you know, the industry, you know, it's a bit of a shame that it's taken, I suppose, these crises that we've had with COVID, the Ukraine war, the supply chain, to actually get together. But I actually feel, you know, we've spoken about this as a group, and we've spoken with a lot of insurers and repairers, that we feel that this is the catalyst for getting people to work together, because I think both the insurance side, the repairers, and all of the supply chain, they've all realized how fragile our businesses actually are. You know, you might be a global player, but, you know, something happens in Russia and you can't get a wiring loom, for example, or you can't get chips manufactured. So I think whilst it's to some degree a shame that we've got there, I think now there is this, I suppose really there's an appetite, I would say, that the repairers and the insurers want to look at this really in a bit of a longer term, because we don't want these knee-jerk reactions of, you know, help, we're up against it, we need a labour rate increase or an energy crisis. We need to start to work together and recognise that inflation is going to happen through repairs because of vehicle build technology, because we do want to recruit, you know, A graders in our body shops and in our insurance companies. And you've got this issue of still not enough people really at the moment to fill the vacancies that are around in jobs. Now, you know, I read an article from McKinsey's that, you know, there were 12 million cases of COVID in the UK in 2022. If you think that most people take 4 days off work to, you know, hopefully not infect the rest of their work colleagues, that's about 250,000 people not available for work for the whole of 2022. And that's a big number that we need to think about. So in terms of, okay, what are we going to do to, or what should we be thinking about? I think we do need to think about this change, that if we do go into recession, and if the vehicle manufacturers do start to get their act together with building new cars, but most of them are saying end of 2024 really, but we will see then used car prices drop. Therefore, we may see an increase in total losses. I also think that, you know, some of the people that made a life decision in COVID around, I don't want to work 50 hours or 60 hours a week, maybe they're going to have to, because they need a bit more money to pay their bills, and you can't just get that through having a salary increase. It's got to come through some sort of production. So I think we've got to, as an industry, think about those impacts that are going to affect us, and therefore, you know, to build that stronger relationship between the insurer and the repairer and the supply chain, because this pendulum could easily swing the other way, and that's the piece I think we need to protect ourselves from.
I totally agree with that. It's a weird thing, like when things get difficult. So, you know, I can imagine insurers, you know, doing their sort of pricing for 2023, start selling their policies, or even for 2022, for example, and then, you know, they get hit by a load of inflationary costs that they didn't expect in the whole claims process, not least repairs, because we all know repairs have gone up enormously with continuous paint increases, with continuous parts increases and everything else that insurers may not have, you know, been ready for. But then what tends to happen is everything starts to tighten up, and engineering teams get pushed to control the cost more, save more money. Instead of, you know, auditing 50%, you need to audit 70%, and that starts to drive a wedge between, you know, the insurers and repairers that for a long time probably have been getting closer. So that doesn't help, right? But at the same time, I do think, you know, there's still, and Wayne makes the point here, you know, repairers see a lot of waste in the process, and it's not a finger pointing exercise, because my God, repairers can waste some money as well. I think we all know that. But you know, it's easier to fix someone else's problems than fix your own for some reason, or to recognise them. And you know, that thing, that sort of scenario never really gets improved if we start to drive apart. And it's now more than ever really that insurers and repairers need to talk more, understand more, drive out more waste. And if anything, it's my view, and of many repairers I talk to, it's going the other way at the moment. How do we stop that?
Again, I do think it's this, you know, collaboration, talking to the insurers, because you're right, you know, you know, all the body shops employ VDAs, the insurers employ, or, you know, either full-time or use externals, the same kind of resource to do the same job. And I think there's a lot there that could be done. You know, I think there's better use of technology to automate some of these processes. I think some of the technology is not quite where it needs to be. Perhaps easier for me to say that now. I'm not embedded inside Solera and Outertext, but when you think of, you know, talk about artificial intelligence, but really, you know, some of that around this chat GPT that's the big rage right now, I think there are things that can be done even inside the body shop in the administration side, because I think most workshops on the shop floor, I think they're pretty efficient. I think they're run pretty tight, but I do think between the insurer, the work provider, if it's an accident manager, and the repairer, there's a lot of duplication in that admin layer. I mean, Kate, you might want to sort of dive in there, having sort of experienced that more recently.
Well, I mean, there is, and you know, there's lots of elements to that. There's layers, isn't there, in the fact that, you know, we don't have enough VDAs, we don't have enough engineers. All of those things are practical considerations, and I think it's, you know, when you are considering how you deal with a crisis, which is what this is in terms of if you're an insurer and you can't get capacity, and you are looking at pretty much uncontrolled inflation across the board, and also inflation that's kind of coming at you out of nowhere, so it's not written in to your plan. The instinct is to kind of move closer rather than move away, whereas I'm going to say the right thing, in inverted commas, the instinctive thing is to move closer, whereas actually the best thing to do in terms of efficiency would be to step back. The point that Wayne's made in the chat is true. To sort of say, to engage with your repair network, say, right, well, what could we do differently here? You know, what can you do that I can do, etc., etc. To Weeksy's point, audit more, engineer less. Focus your engineering resource on the cases that really need two sets of eyes on it. Don't look at the ones that we kind of know a repair all day long. Unfortunately, that's kind of goes against the human condition, doesn't it? And that goes against the way we all sort of instinctively react to a situation that is kind of out of control. We put more control in rather than going, do you know what, we're going to sit back and see what happens and have trust in people. I think there's opportunities for that to happen. I think there's lots of opportunities for repairers to step forward and talk to their work providers. A sort of a bugbear of mine would be to get the repairers talking to the insurers about the comms cycle of the communication of, you know, throughout a claim. Who's doing what? I bet you probably doing the same thing and confusing the person that we're supposed to be servicing. And I think if we started there with that kind of collaboration, where Mr. Repairer talks to Mr. Insurer and says, right, what are we both doing here? That could be the start of some really beautiful conversations that do two things: drives down cost in both businesses, drives up service levels.
Okay, right. Freeze on.
I don't mean service levels in terms of contractual service levels. I mean the output in terms of a happy customer at the end of the day.
Freeze on that, because I think you made a really good point. You really have. You know, at a time where times are tough for everyone, we can all do with driving out waste really and running more efficiently. And when you look at our sort of industry from, you know, a helicopter, it is just a massive lines shooting out everywhere. It really is. Everybody's shooting at everything all the time.
Yeah.
At times, you know, I mean, there's some fantastically innovative repairers out there and some really, really smart people. And out in the rest of the supply chain, there's some great technology and there are some great companies, some very forward-thinking ones. But what you tend to have, well, or what I've kind of observed in time I've been here, is like a repairer or a group of repairers can operate really well, potentially with an insurer or an accident management company. But all of the insurers and accident management companies don't work as a unit. And all the repairers don't work as a unit. If we could have two sectors of the industry talking to each other as whole sectors and saying, right, forget about all the competitive advantage that Direct Line could have over Admiral, could have over something else, you know, because that can all be done by underwriting. Let's just actually sit together as two parties and say, right, what can we all do together to drive out a load of waste? And we can tons of it.
Chris, that's a really good point, because if you think about, you know, we were talking about it earlier where insurers have helped out with energy costs or with mobility costs. When you look now at the complexity of an insurance contract, especially around the stuff that goes into Zone 99, I mean, it's a minefield, and repairers, I don't care how good you are, and I don't care how good the VDA is, if you're working for multiple insurers or multiple accident managers, you're bound to miss something or get it wrong, which again comes up the wrong way perhaps sometimes in an audit. So I think those sorts of things we could perhaps start to talk about and say, you know what, why don't we just set a rate and make that that part of it easier, because again, it's very hard to measure anything that's in Zone 99.
Dave, that's where I see a real golden space for Cognoscenti, because, you know, as NBRA, we've tried to pull together lots of different forums and stuff like that, and we've been, you know, reasonably successful. But at the end of the day, push comes to shove, I'm there representing the repair industry, and I can't act, you know, trying to pretend like I'm an impartial referee in the middle is just not going to work. We need Switzerland in the middle, and it's not because we're at war, and it's not because we need a safe haven. We need a space where people can act together and talk common sense without all the dramas around sort of competition and stuff like that. Now, that's why I think Cognoscenti have got a really great opportunity, actually. Okay, just we've touched on some of the things that repairers should do. You know, given the situation, and from your experience at Solera, which was an enormous organisation, which I'm sure saw some tough times here and there, and Andy, you know, RSA, you know, you'd have gone through your tough times. But from your experience in senior positions there, what should repairers not do when, you know, when times get tough? What are the things that you shouldn't do?
I think all my sort of three sort of leading tips. I mean, listen, this sounds like, you know, it's all doom and gloom, and it really isn't, Chris. I mean, the you know, the automotive, the future of mobility is hugely optimistic. But what we've got to be, I think, mindful of are the sort of monsters coming over the hill. We are where we are because of you know, unprecedented things that nobody could predict. And you know, we're insurance companies, or the insurance companies out there. It's our job to kind of predict, to underwrite. You know, what's the likelihood of a 25-year-old guy in a red car with 6 points on his license having an accident, and then with AI, you know, what's that car going to cost to repair? So that's all like kind of like the now. But I would urge everybody in this, and this is what Cognoscenti are pushing towards, is look, you know, to the end of 23 and 24, because we know an awful lot of things that are happening or are going to happen at the moment. The situation in China, and manufacturers are pulling out of China wholesale at the moment because of the geopolitical sort of unrest there and the support of Russia and what have you. And vehicle manufacturers, for example, have invested like hundreds of millions of pounds to go over there, and China have offered them millions to sort of stay there, and they're pulling away. Now, they can't pull away wholesale because parts manufacturer moved with, you know, I mean, a part is manufactured for sort of 6 or 7 years to the end of the vehicle design life, then they'll move it. So it's not going to happen overnight. But, you know, this EV thing, we know about that. We know about, you know, Boris's dream about, you know, no more, you know, ICE cars from 2030 or whatever, and it may happen or it probably won't. But the infrastructure thing, think forward, Chris. So the things they shouldn't do. Work on the basis that when insurers come to you for a fleet of 30 or 50 electric courtesy cars, that the prices of these are going to go up hugely, and the chip shortage, that sort of stuff. So, but as I say, my three kind of, I suppose, to close sort of tips for the repairers. So the opposite, what they shouldn't do is to continually build trust with the stakeholders. And I think that's gathered traction in 22. Trust is what gives your businesses the license to operate, and human nature sees us want to have trust in the businesses we buy from, those we work for, and those in which we invest, whether it's kind of stock market or we invest as an asset and work with them as business partners. So sharing your results and your issues and your successes through, as I say, the Cognoscenti lead, or through whichever kind of route to market you choose, promotes trust and provides vital transparency to your partners. And it's not a signal to be taken advantage of. Remember that. And when you close the door on a relationship, be it an insurer serving notice on a repairer or a repairer serving notice on a paint distributor, close the door gently, because at some point you may well need to reopen that door, and think of how your actions impact the other party. Put yourself in the other person's shoes, take a paradigm shift. It'll be less painful for all. The other thing, or number two on my kind of hot list of three, is to, and this isn't just repairers, this is absolutely everybody, and insurers have really taken a lead here, is to embed value-led sustainability. Sustainability is arguably the biggest business growth opportunity that exists today. Everything else is really, really difficult. Sustainability isn't so much. The transition to a low carbon economy offers us, exciting opportunities to generate and improve revenue in areas such as clean tech and green innovation, renewables, that kind of thing, and see it as a source of value, not of cost. So over time, it pays you back and increases your efficiency and profit. I mean, it's not a day one thing, it's a 1, 2 and 3 year payback. But the Ernst & Young climate report and the Trend Tracker report showed that 70% of UK companies working with this culture showed higher than predicted profits, up to 40% over a 2 year period.
Yes.
And finally was the rethink the trade and supply chain. So again, don't be afraid to confront. If you've got to pull, as Wayne said, if you've got to pull away from an insurer because you can't make it work, then that's no different to Marks and Spencer stopping selling cashmere jumpers because they can't get cashmere, that kind of thing. So supply disruption has hit us all badly in one way or another since COVID. We've all seen so many blips in the last 20 years as well that we didn't predict. I mean, which old repairers on there can, remember you couldn't get a VW Golf bumper for 5 months in 2003. We'll get through it. We survived, all right. I'm being a bit cynical because one bumper doesn't equal the problems that we've been through, but it was a major issue then. But compared to what we've been through now, it's a drop in the ocean. But build resilience into your supply models, promote simplicity, embrace technology, and assess the credentials of your partners before you sign on the dotted line. So trust and reputation is important, but commitment is critical. So I think those things will bring, as I say, the opposite of what you shouldn't do, more around what you should do. But, kind of don't give up on it. I think just be aware of the fact that the supply chains are huge and they're changing. And, we're not going to be able to go back, Chris.
Andy, that's an absolutely tremendous roundup. That I mean, so listen, thank you. We've overrun a little bit, and I know we wanted to talk about people actually and the impact of people. Maybe we can save that for another one.
Yeah.
Listen, I guess it's big thanks to you all, Kate, Dave, Andy, for sharing all of this with us tonight. I personally think you have got a really exciting and big space to explore there in the middle of the market. Thanks to everyone else for coming on as well. I know it's quite late at night, but hopefully you found it really interesting. We've got another Cognoscenti webinar coming up on I think it's the 8th of March, isn't it, Kate? Where I think we're going to focus on technology and what's next. But yes, that's it from us tonight. It will be recorded, we can share it, and thanks all for joining. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being in.